Will, in the legacy segment, give us a flavor for what deal activity is like, what's driving it, both in this market and maybe across markets too.
I think maybe to kick off with maybe just a moment on what do we mean by legacy.
Oh.
And it's kind of convenient given it's the graveyard session after lunch. It's appropriate for legacy. Historically, we would have been all about dealing with the past, discontinued portfolios. I think the market's changed dramatically in the last 3 years. Legacy now is so much more accepted as a solution for both capital and liabilities. It's all about cutting the tail, delivering finality, delivering a solution for volatility, but also providing capital relief. And if you look across the market, it's a who's who who've traded in the legacy market, from Europe to Bermuda to North America. Allianz, Zurich, QBE, Hartford, Travelers, CNA, you name it, people have traded in the legacy market. So it's a very accepted mechanism for delivering some solution.
What changed 3 years ago? What has made it, what's driven the higher acceptance of the product?
I think a combination. I think there are more solutions now. Historically, it might have been a sale of a company. It might have been a legal transfer, Part 7 transfers, dare I say it, schemes of arrangement. With Mr. Schwartzman, I know is here, the founding father of schemes of arrangement. That used to be a traditional mechanism for dealing with legacy liabilities. Now we're talking about reinsurance agreements. I go back to 2011 when we did our first LPT. I was talking to a broker last week who said actually the first reserve cover he underwrote was back in the 90s. So now the reinsurance solution is just part of day-to-day activity. And again, it used to be PwC, EY, KPMG. It isn't anymore. It's the brokers. It's the main reinsurance brokers who are finding solutions for their clients. So I think there's been a real step change in that thinking from clients. And for me, what that means is that there isn't really a line of business that people are focusing on. There isn't really a territory, although North America, Europe, and Lloyd's are the primary markets. But everybody is sitting down looking at how do we deal and manage with our tail and volatility.
Yeah, I mean, social inflation, or as I have been taught this morning to teach it, legal system abuse, to call it legal system abuse. Does that affect demand for cover?
It does.
Legacy cover?
A lot of traditional portfolios that come to our market would be long-term casualty books. Again, whether it be UK, we don't tend to see so much of it in Europe, although we have a lot of legacy med-mal portfolios in our overall book of business. But in the US, it's a big driver of activity. And we're lucky enough in the legacy markets because we get to price it a second time. It doesn't mean to say it's that much easier to price it a second time, but at least if you've got the development curve, it's a lot easier to form a view on pricing.
I understand. And talk a little bit about, from the point of view of the seller, where do you add value, right? Why is it that you can do better with the risk than the seller? I understand they're trying to manage their profile and they want certainty and finality, but what do you add?
So traditionally, it would have been claims.
Right.
And we have a laser focus on managing claims. And that's still very much part of the overall legacy solution. But increasingly, clients and cedents are looking to withhold claims control to manage their portfolios. What we do is actually we do a mix. There'll be certain segments where clients want to retain control because they've got an ongoing client relationship. And there's definitely a trade-off between live claims handling and legacy claims handling. We make our money from an upfront risk premium. We make our money on investment income and from settling the claims quicker and cheaper. We work the expenses harder. And for us, being able to get control of the claims has been super important. That is changing, though. And I think part of the increasing acceptance in the market is because the legacy market is prepared to cede a little bit of claims control, a little bit of influence. Actually, it's unlocked some cedents who've brought transactions to market because they want to keep claims control.
I should mention that we will have time for questions, so if any of you have questions for Will, think them up, put a hand up, and we'll call on you here very shortly. A big topic for the Financial Times, of course, has been the emergence of private capital within insurance generally. I'm very curious to hear what your experience has been within your part of the kingdom. What do you think about the emergence of private capital?
I mean, the business that I have the pleasure of running, Compre, has been backed by private equity since 2010. We're on our third set of institutional investors, and I have to say, we wouldn't be here as a driving force in the legacy market without them, without their incremental capital, but also without the discipline and the governance that they brought to our business. It's a big step up for us if I go back to 2010 when I first got involved in the company. As CEO, I have a challenging set of investors. They understand our market, they understand our business. And actually, I always want them to challenge me to be better. I want them to challenge our business to be better. And that's not about squeezing the lifeblood out of every cent that we have on our balance sheet. Actually, genuinely, it's about building a business for the long term. So I think from my experience of private equity has been good. I'm not suggesting it's been a breeze all the way through, but it's been good. And I think we've got a smart group of patient investors now in our market. We've got pension fund money, we've got long-term investors who actually want to match duration of assets and liabilities on a long-term basis.
And that's the sort of traditional story, is that you get investors who match your duration profile, right? And that makes a huge difference. We haven't but I wanted to get more into this in our first question, but what about this year in particular and looking into next year? How is the market evolving kind of immediately as we speak?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. We've seen some new developments, some new product sets that are starting to come through. We spend a lot of time looking and building relationships with investors that are coming into the marketplace. And investors actually don't want to sit there for 20, 30 years on a casualty account. They want finality earlier. So we're starting to see some new solutions come out. Enstar announced their forward exit option recently. We have a similar solution. We did our first forward exit back in 2021. I think it's starting to be a real theme across the ILS market. We've seen it on Property Cat, we're seeing it on ILS. So I think that's probably the new developments really gathering ahead of steam this year. We did a trade earlier this year with a fronting carrier as well. The logic around recycling capital in your organization is all reinforcing capital light for earnings valuations rather than asset valuations.
Right.
So that's an increasing theme too.
Can I ask you about rate, or how is that?
Yeah, I think we're starting to see. Last year there was a big gap between cedents and reinsurers in our market, particularly on US casualty. We've seen strengthening in the market. I think there's probably more strengthening to come, but we started to see that bid-ask spread fall a little bit, which is good. I think you always have to remain disciplined. So we price once to expiry, and when we're working on these transactions, it's binary. You either get 100% or you get zero. That's a tough operating model. So when you do close a deal and you do reinsure your cedent, you've got to make sure you're delivering the right kind of return on equity to your shareholders. But having said that, we all are starting to look for longer term relationships.
What, in your business, what's a good return on equity? I'll tell you what it is in journalism.
I think people would probably sit there and say a sensible return on your capital is probably a mid-teens figure. The extent to which you can push it higher depends on your operating model, depends on the quality of your team, and also depends on the pricing you can get through in the market.
Of course. Does anyone in the audience have a question? All right, we've stunned them into submission. I'm very interested, and I'm sure the audience will be interested in the particular role of this market, the Bermuda market in your business? Can you give a flavor for how is it different from the others? Is the global market of a piece?
I think in many respects, from a legacy perspective, all routes lead to Bermuda. There's only one of our competitors that isn't group supervised by the BMA. They do operate here. Everybody else is in Bermuda. I think what we have here is a market and a regulator that really understands what we do. They understand Lloyd's, the RITC process. Perhaps they're less familiar with Europe, even though clearly they have European equivalents. But Europe has some intricacies, let's call it that. I think the BMA is more familiar with the North American market. The North American legacy market is the largest in the world. So it's a very typical tried and tested solution to underwrite an LPT straight into Bermuda.
Let's close, and I want you to get out your crystal ball a little bit for us. You know, we've been talking about the short-term future. What about the long-term future of your edge of the industry? When you're planning for your business, when you look at what your rivals and colleagues are doing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how's the industry going to look?
I think there's an increasing convergence with the live market. We're a reinsurance market like any other. We're underwriting the tail. I think long-term client relationships are going to be fundamental to the success of both cedent and reinsurer. And that means not taking your return on a single one-off transaction. That means looking over a number of years as you build your relationship with the client. I think casualty sidecars, where we position ourselves to provide a forward exit and provide a solution for new capital coming into the market to be able to exit it when they want to. I think that's going to be really, really crucial as well. There's still going to be the place for the discontinued book, or there's going to be the place for the insurer that just wants to get out of a market. We have a long-standing European client that wants to get out of a particular market in the US. We've been working on the transaction for 18 months. We dig in to sit alongside them and give them their exit. So I think there's lots of different tools, but closer and closer to the live market is where I would see us going.
Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Will.
Thank you.
That was good.